So today we have two distinguished guests, and we'd like to give them a warm welcome. We have John Chu from the SBA, the Small Business Administration, and then we have Denise Whitford from the SBDC. So again, let's give them a warm welcome. So a little background about John. John Chu has over 30 years of combined experience in international business development, management, sales, and marketing, small business banking and lending, investment, insurance, financial planning, and trade finance. He's worked for 4 of the top 10 Wall Street financial firms, such as Citigroup, JP Morgan, Chase, and AIG. His current job at SBA is to train the lenders, SBA resource partners, and small businesses on SBA loan programs and services, trade finance, government contracting, and international procurement opportunities. Before joining the SBA in 2007, she was Vice President, Regional Small Business Banking Representative at Washington Mutual Bank in the state of Connecticut, responsible for training branch managers and small business banking officers in 15 branches on small business banking, lending, trade finance, credit insurance, and SBA loan programs. Prior to that, she was Assistant Vice President and Direct Sales Officer of Small Business Banking at JP Morgan Chase, responsible for maximizing territorial sales of small business banking and lending at 10 branches in Connecticut. Prior to that, she worked at, as financial consultant at AIG and Citigroup. She was Certified Global Business Professional, CGBP, we'll talk more about that certification in a bit, by National Association of Small Business International Trade Educator, NASBITE. So again, let's welcome John. Next we have Denise Whitford. She is with the SBDC. She's been with the SBDC for 5 years, but she has over 30 years in the banking industry, 10 years specializing in economic development. She focuses on accelerators, entrepreneurial accelerators. Does anybody know what an entrepreneurial accelerator is? Have you heard of the sort of accelerator or incubators? Yeah. These are locations where you can go as students, future entrepreneurs, current business owners, and they are a place. We have one called Access 901 on Main Street at MCC on Main. We have the Scoliosis Entrepreneurship Center. There is Height at Reset in Hartford. So these are places where you can go utilize your space, somehow co-working spaces where you can meet other entrepreneurs, share ideas, and get help and support and counsel for starting your businesses. So Denise works with Access 901, and she also works with our own Scoliosis Entrepreneurship Center, MCC on Main. So MCC has an entrepreneurship center. And she will also be sitting for her Global Business Professionals certificate in November. So again, welcome to our guests. So without further ado, I will hand you off to John, who will speak about the importance of exporting. So I invited both of these classes, both of your classes, to come because it's extremely important to understand global trade and to understand what that means for the U.S. economy and for us as citizens, especially in this economic climate. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you. It's really a great pleasure to be here. Our students here. Denise and I will work together to work through, our presentation. It was just 3 hours presentation. We'll try to condense. Hopefully, we can complete 1 hour and then give 20 minutes for you guys to ask questions. If I start, anybody has any experience in international trade? Of your families, your parents, your company, they're exporting. The reason I ask is that I was giving the same presentation in the University of Bridgeport. We usually get 30-40 students. A lot of them, their families, parents are running the companies. So through this learning, process, they learn all these basic concepts and then help the families grow their businesses. So they can afford to pay your tuition if you want to go to Harvard, right? That's what you're planning to do. With further ado, where's my presentation? Okay. Okay, now, speaking of being global, all the questions we asked about when we go around, many people are confused about how we can take that approach. We got all products, coming to our country, to America, because everybody loves to sell in America. And but how we, as an American company, export our products service overseas. So we will teach a process, a 6-step process. But these are the basics. Hopefully, down further in the road, we work with the professors to see how we can, further give you more detailed trainings or classes that you can learn more from all the government resources that we offer you. And it is free. Okay, now you can go ahead. Push the button here. You have control. Okay. Why and how? I know you're students. I've been to school, oh my God, 55 some years ago when I was graduating from high school. We are always asked about why should I export? We domestically, what do you find? And what do you say? Some are not. The reasons why you need to export because 96% of customers live outside of America. We have only about 300 million people. And they represent 2/3 of the purchasing power. They got money. And they love American products. Anything made in America, brand name is so strong. Okay? They want to buy it and they premium. And the second reason why we should export is because export creates jobs in America. I look at federal government, SBA, U.S. Small Business Administration. Our mission is to help companies grow and succeed. Thus we can create more jobs. So export is supported by 11.5 million jobs. And there are about 300,000 small businesses that export. And we have big companies, GE, Scotty, IBM. But the majority of them exporters in America are small exporters. We get about 33% of our exports, and of course, we strengthen our global competitiveness. Not only big company for us. Of course, that will enhance national economy and job creation. Why export will give you all this data? They're performing better. We don't want to go all the way down, but they also need to look at the data. So once you graduate, if you're looking for a job, those companies that export, definitely pay 15% higher on average based on the data studies. Okay, let's see. Now we look at all total picture of U.S. export this year. Since everyone trying to sell into the American market, we got to, that we obviously fight that, but we need to do more work to export. We export, United States, we export about 1.4 trillion, based on NAICS scope. NAICS stands for North American Industry Classification System Code, 1.4 trillion. And now here are the top six export markets for the United States. Canada, of course, number one, Mexico, number two, because we have free trade agreements. That's why we renegotiate under this new administration with these two trade partners. And China is the third one. Now we do have issues with China because they have a trade surplus with us over $300 billion. We only export 150 to them. Japan is around 4 to 63 billion, UK 55 billion, Germany 49 billion. That's our national export numbers. Just give you a briefing. I'll try to put all these briefing numbers there. Now we look at New England area, our England area. We export to the world about 52 billion, and breaks down 7 countries, Canada, Mexico, Germany. But Germany by now, see China remains at number 4, France, UK, and Japan. So these are the export numbers. Now we further down go to Connecticut. Right, New England, Connecticut, export last year about $14 billion. There are about 5,000 companies that are exporting without thinking they're looking for a job. There's 5,000 companies in Connecticut they export. Once you learn these skills and the knowledge, and 89% of them are small, medium-sized companies. So they have SME, small, medium entrepreneur or enterprises. They support 70,000 jobs. On job. No, those companies support 70,000 jobs last year. And our top 5 export category. What do we sell? That's the latest number, 2015 from Census Bureau. Transportation group, $7 billion. Machinery, $1.6 billion. Computer and electronic products, $1.1 billion. Chemicals, $1.1 billion. And the electrical equipment, also $1 billion. These are the big items, over $1 billion that Connecticut export. And our top 7 markets right here. By the way, anybody's bilingual here? Anybody speak Spanish? Okay. German? French? Oh, who are français? How about Japanese? Chinese? Oh, okay. Mexicans too, right? Canadians, European, China. So these are top markets. If you're bilingual, you probably have translated all those the information about the product and service into the language of the target country. So bilingual is good. It's an advantage for the students. You know, when I was teaching UP, the students were coming from over 22 countries. You know, they got some ideas and then they set up their own company. Don't forget, they are very young, 20, so you can set up your own company if you really have a burning desire to be your own boss. Okay, we're talking about third district. We just skip over that. That's about Connecticut Native District. Okay, here's the process. How you can export. Many people, I don't know how to export. But the SB has working together with the U.S. Commerce Department, come up with the 6-step approach. I'm going to hand it over to my partner, Denise. She's going through that for you.
Thank you, John. Good morning. First, I want to apologize for my voice. I was in Nashville, Tennessee at a national conference, and I spoke so much, I lost my voice. This is only the second day in a week and a half I've been able to speak. Can everybody hear me okay?
Good, yep.
As John was talking to you about some of the numbers in the national sense, the regional, and the state sense, and then right here in Connecticut. One of the reasons that we're coming out to you is to help you think a little bit more about how international trade and business tie together. And a lot of the things that the Small Business Development Center does, also known as SBDC, is works with entrepreneurs and existing business owners to help them take what they currently do here in the United States and expand them. So if you have market penetration of, say, $1 million a year in revenues, we want to help you expand that beyond the boundaries of Connecticut and the United States and move into easy markets. Some of those easy markets are Canada and Mexico, because we have a North American Trade Agreement, also known as NAFTA. There's an awful lot of acronyms in our industry, and therefore I try to dispel some of that and explain it to you, so I'll move very quickly through this. The 6 steps I'm going to expand just a little bit more as we go through the next couple of slides. I think I'm done. The first one is looking at your readiness. Our website at the SBDC is going to be expanded by the end of October. Right now at sba.gov and export.com, you can go in and you can get information that we will be able to take a test. And that assessment goes through a number of things about your products, your supply chain, your preparedness as far as your staff, and where your financing is coming from. Not just where you're getting funding from a bank or investors, but where your cash flow is coming in. Are you prepared? And as you can see on this slide, just like in school, if you score between a 90 and 100, that's an A. And that means that you're most likely prepared to begin to export. No worries, if you're not, there's folks like me at the SBDC. There's also individuals that SCORE. That acronym stands for Service Corps of Retired Executives. They're not all retired, but many of them have worked in business and industry and exported as well. The other group that you can go to, particularly if you are a woman-owned business, is the Women's Business Centers. And they do the same type of advising at no cost to you. So if you have questions about not just how to form your business, but also how to expand into markets, we can help you, and so can those other SBA partners. Our objective, again, as you can see up here, is to strengthen the potential for you to be as successful as possible, so when you begin to export, you don't fall on your head or get taken by a scam or someone who's just looking to get your product and never pay you. And I put John has been so gracious in putting this together. We put the website up here of export.gov. So again, the assessment includes what are your products, what are your services, but who is going to need that product? Who would use it? And we look at things like age and other types of demographic data, like buying trends in Japan would be very different than buying trends in South America. And one of the examples I can think of is I have a client, for example, who makes tea-infused ice cream. We all like green tea and matcha, well, most of us do. And when you infuse that into ice cream, one of the highest buying markets would most likely be a country that drinks tea rather than coffee as their primary beverage. So we're trying to work with that individual to get them to export out to those areas. The second thing we look at, which is the third bullet point, do you have capacity here to make sure that you can produce enough? Because once you open the doors, suddenly you have more product you have to get out there and a contract that you have to meet. So your preparedness means, are you able to create the little paper cups and have the machinery and equipment and the ingredients to put the ice cream in the cup, and then do you have the capacity to ship it to the places that it needs to go? Your cash flow is really important, but so is your inventory and your capacity of your staff. How many of you know what I'm talking about when I say Lucy and Ricky Ricardo and the Lucille Ball show? Do you remember that conveyor belt where she and Ethel were sitting there trying to pack up the chocolates, and they didn't know what to do, and I kept eating them? I wouldn't mind eating that ice cream, but that could be a real problem because then you have waste and you lose money. So that's our objective, so you don't become Lucy. The other thing is, on the bottom part of this, is exporting part of your main mission and your main goal? If your objective is to make French fries for McDonald's and Wendy's and all the other fast food chains, would you potentially have a market in another part of the world? Who thinks you would? How many of you think the potential market would be more than $1 million a year? Guess what? When I travel internationally, one of the #1 places foreign consumers go is places that serve French fries. Americans have an amazing habit of making really good food out of dipping them in grease. I go to the Big E every year and I have whatever's deep fried. One time it was the Oreos, another time it was bananas. How many of you go to the Big E and eat the fried stuff?
That fried Jello one year as well.
They had Jell-O.
Right.
They did. It was really interesting. So aside from that, I touched on this one. A lot of the things that we do is looking at counseling. And as John was saying earlier, our district office is one of our main places that we go. John and I partner a lot when we have individuals who need to get exported. What's required to take your show on the road and go to Canada or Mexico or Europe or Asia? We work together to do that. And so what we've done is we've put together an online process in which, again, to evaluate where you are, but help you be prepared. What are the Incoterms, the international trade terms? How do you pack it? How do you ship it? Believe it or not, in many cases, when you're putting together a product and it needs to be carton, put in a carton, and then inside of a bigger carton, and inside of a crate or a container to go on a ship, there are different people and different unions and different contracts you have to sign to get it from shore to door, wherever it's going. So that's our job, is to help you understand that. And again, I talked about SBDC, SCORE, Women's Business Development Centers. But there are a number of export agencies out there that we call USIACs. And some of them listed here are the World Trade Centers, the Chambers of Commerce, and there's a variety of export associations that you can find through our website and other places. But the most important thing is that last line. How many of you have ever had an encounter with an attorney or a legal entity in a positive sense or a negative sense? Doesn't matter, I'm just saying both. I go to court once in a while, and it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. And sometimes I go as an expert witness and talking about a business process. Or somebody doing something wrong, or did they do everything they could in good faith to make it right? Well, there's a group of attorneys out there that are part of this Export Legal Assistance Network called ELON. And I want to go a little bit in detail about that because it's really important for you to know that right now there's about 250 attorneys in that. And they're in more than 70 cities, and they're international cities. So if I want to export to Peru, one of my colleagues just went down to Colombia. We have a sister city in Colombia that we operate with the SBDCs down there. And it's really important in many ways to look at that because the cultural values here are very different than there. But more importantly, so is the legal system. And what you expect in the United States as a warranty and a guarantee is not what you're going to find in other places in the world. You need to have a really good legal team that's going to help you understand not just the terminology, but what's your line of recourse if they default. That's what Elon helps you with. In addition to that, if you have a new mechanism that slices French fries in a whole different way, you should get a patent on that in most cases, and not just on the item, but perhaps the process. And that intellectual property is something that you need to protect. You don't just protect it in the United States, but every country that you take that product to or that machinery to. As John told you, there's billions of dollars of machinery and equipment that are exported from the United States every year. You need to put some kind of intellectual property protection on that in every country you sell. And those patents don't last for a lifetime. They last maybe 7 years. But every country has a different filing. So what you expect here in the United States, again, is not going to be the same in India. It's not going to be the same in Zimbabwe. And the last part of that, as I told you a little earlier, all those things on that bottom line come to your bottom line, your revenues, but also your cost structure. And if you think about taxation, and you think about your freight forwarders, does anybody know what a freight forwarder is? I know you know the names. How many have heard of UPS, FedEx, DHL? Those are freight forwarders. Google and Amazon also have companies that they work with. We have an option to use those three that I named, or they have their own independent carriers. Know who those carriers are and how your product would be insured. Because if you put product on a ship and that ship sinks, you're out of luck if you didn't insure it correctly. You know those terms. The tariffs and how you file those items, as well as I said, your property rights and export licensing. Compliance is one of the biggest things that we talked about when I was at my national convention, because compliance regulations are going to get tighter over the next couple of years. We're not going to allow free trade. And oops, I forgot to put these things on my container, but let it go through anyway. There's fines, and they're very, very steep.
Denise, may I also interject? So I don't know if some of you, how many here have an eBay account or sell on eBay or Etsy, et cetera? I was surprised years ago when I first listed items for sale on eBay, and then all of a sudden I had international buyers. I knew limited amount regarding the process, as far as what had to be prepared, what types of goods and services we could ship. I also work in the skincare industry. I'm a consultant, and there are certain products we cannot ship overseas that are permissible here. One such item is skin lotion that contains vitamin K. In some countries, it's prohibited because it's a suspected carcinogen, even though our studies don't indicate that. So you may inadvertently stumble upon, or become an international seller just by listing something online. And the second you open up your website to sales, you need to know the processes, because there are fines involved. There are ramifications if you do not follow the intended orders.
You're bringing up an excellent point. Several clients to that point became accidental successes.
Right.
They opened up their website and suddenly the world found them, and it's in pet products. Not food, but clothing and accessories. Yes, people do buy clothing. I can see Sheila looking as if she's chuckling, but somebody you know has clothing and jewelry for their dogs. And what ended up happening was she had all these customers overseas, and it really created a boondoggle for her. So you brought up an excellent point by a great example. Thank you for sharing
Sure.
that. So the important thing that helps you understand all of this is sitting down with an advisor, again, SCORE, Women's Business Development, and of course us at the SBDC, and putting a viable export plan together. We hear a lot about the business model canvas. There really is a high-level view of your supply chain and your bottom line, your cost structure and your revenue structure. How many of you have gone through the business model canvas in your classes? No one has done that. Oh my goodness.
We're in September, so the semester just started.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, you know what? I'll volunteer to come back if you want me to do that,
Sure.
because we have some really cool analogies that we draw. The SBDC has a product called Growth Wheel, and we overlay the Growth Wheel in a 360 view of your business on top of that business model canvas. And this stuff is written for you just by plugging in the components there. So in an ideal sense, you should have a business plan before you engage any kind of business. You need to have some kind of operations and some kind of cash flow. We call that traction in my industry. And you can have an idea, I want to sell French fries to Nicaragua, okay? Where are you going to get your potatoes? Who's going to buy them? Who's going to market and distribute them? Those kinds of questions. How much are you going to charge? That's really important to know domestically that you have business and traction before you'll be seen as a viable interest in Nicaragua. So that export plan has to come back to your main objectives, who your market is, and you need to assemble your facts. Not just, I think I can do this. That's great, the little train can, he thinks he can, or she can, but what have you done? What is the revenue monthly, quarterly, and annually? And then what are your margins? That is really important. And then we transfer that into getting you out to those foreign markets. So creating that business plan covers these points, and I'm going to delve into them very quickly. As you can see in the top, there's always your executive summary, just like a great novel and a great textbook. You have the blah, blah, blah in the beginning. It's high-level executive summary. It's an introduction to your thought process. Part one is your export policy commitment. And we kind of already talked about that because I want to do this. Here's who's going to buy it. Here's what they're going to buy. Here's how they're going to buy it. And who, but, when, where, how, and why are always important in that summary. And then the situation and background to the process. And as you can see on the slide, what is the product? What is the service? How do you operate and how do you produce it? But also, who's going to do it? Where are you going to get your workforce from? So we talked about McDonald's and when they started going overseas, a lot of people think they ship all their products with them, and they don't. Are there international folks here? Anybody from outside the United States?
Where are you folks from?
Where are you from? Colombia? Okay. Okay. India? Okay. How many of you have McDonald's? Okay. Is McDonald's in your home country the same as here? Is the menu the same? What's different about it? If everybody didn't hear that, the menu is different. It's more, there's more dipping and sauces, and it's wedged because it's the style and the desire of that particular country. So McDonald's knew that, and no one is from Asia here, are they? There's more fish and chicken on the menus there than there is here. Beef is big one is over there, but again, it's different. And what they do is they generate this cohesion between the cultures. So I want you to think about that in terms of what is your product and service, and will it always be rigid to what we have in the United States, or will you adjust it in some way so there's a tighter cultural fit? Because again, your bottom line has to be where you're going to generate revenue. How are you going to pull people in? That's really important. So when you look at your operations, how does that change your machinery and equipment? How does it change your training for your employees? How does it change your supply chain and the cost of getting those products and adjusting your menus? So that's really important. That's why we work on this kind of thing for you. And again, I covered the rest of those bullet points in different words, considering the personality, export, and the structure. But the one thing I didn't talk about is who else are you competing with? Let's blurt out a few of the competitors for McDonald's. Blurt them out, anybody.
Burger King.
Burger King. What else? Wendy's. What else? Arby's. Yep. Would it shock you to know? Everyone's seen this on Main Street, Manchester. I'm sure you have. Corey's ketchup and mustard. A couple of you are like this. Although they're custom burgers, they are still providing a choice for the consumer. It is still a competitive advantage for Corey to know. When he opens ketchup and mustard, he's got McDonald's and Arby's and Wendy's and all the other ones out there. Does that make sense to you? So you've got to think about it in terms of direct versus indirect competition and what sets you apart in your differentiator. That's going to help you, again, sustain a competitive advantage in foreign markets. It will not be the same competitive advantage here in the United States in every case. Does anybody have questions on that?
What do you folks think is McDonald's competitive advantage?
You would say, what is McDonald's competitive advantage? That which it does better than others. What do they do better? Okay, lower prices. How do you think they could afford to offer lower prices? How can Walmart afford lower prices? How could McDonald's afford a $1 menu?
Economy of scale.
Okay, economies of scale. The larger they orders from the suppliers, the more. But what else?
Cheaper materials.
Okay, let's talk about their turnover as well. Their inventory turnover. Yeah, years ago, if you take a look at Walmart and Rubbermaid, it's a prime example. Years ago, vendors used to have a lot more control and power in the industry. They really controlled where their merchandise went. But now we have such large conglomerates such as Walmart, they actually set the prices. And what happened years ago, there was an increase in the price of plastics, and Rubbermaid wanted to embed that in the price of their products, and Walmart said, unfortunately, we will not accept that price increase. You must therefore manufacture the product at the price we're asking you. And it drove them into bankruptcy. And what they have is what's called a reverse auction, where they bring vendors into these small rooms and negotiate. So an auction is typically, it goes to the what? What bidder? The highest. They do what's called a reverse auction, where they're looking for the lowest bidder. So the reason Walmart is able to sell, obviously they have large buying power because the number of items they're purchasing, but also because the inventory turnover, the amount of merchandise that is going in and out of that store. And how do you think they track it at Walmart? How do they track what's coming in and out of that store?
Barcodes.
Yeah, they're known for the barcodes and the Scantrons that they have. They can tell down not only to the year, to the month, to the week, to the day, but down to the minute as far as the merchandise that is being sold in that store. And they have an auto replenishment system built in where it'll send an order to the warehouse, and they could have an order back on the shelves up to as soon as the very next day. So, sorry, I didn't interrupt.
Two interesting points.
Yeah.
Most people believe, and I'm going to ask you this question rather than tell you, do you believe McDonald's main revenue comes from their food or their service or something else? What do you think?
Who thinks food?
Who thinks food? Who thinks service? McDonald's built its reputation in the first part of their life, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin.
No.
In the first part of their life as a consistent mass production. And let's face it, no matter where in America that you go, you're generally going to get the same McDonald's, other than the ketchup. The ketchup is slightly altered wherever you go in the country. But the mainstay of their business is real estate. When you buy a franchise, you also have to lease the real estate or you buy the real estate. So keep that in mind. Things aren't always what they appear. Walmart. This was my graduate degree synopsis and scenario. I did not choose this, my professor made me do it. Sometimes that happens in life. But Walmart deals as economies of scale. One thing people don't realize is there's two major players here in Connecticut that do this as well. Walmart does not own their inventory. If you sell to Walmart, you own that inventory until it goes beep. You do it better. Beep. So their taxation is much lower. Who else do you know, if you know this? It's manufacturing. It's one of the largest manufacturers. Who in Connecticut has that same model? Anybody heard of Pratt & Whitney? With a lot of their vendors, they have an inventory control that's very high-tech. They do not own the majority of the inventory. If you're manufacturing these little ball bearing parts and the casing in which those ball bearings go into, you own that and it stays on your property until Pratt & Whitney calls it in. It's called a demand order. Keep that in mind. It's a different kind of economy of scale. You're shaking your head.
Yeah.
So the next component here, as I jump through this, is looking at the marketing component. How do you identify and evaluate those markets? Well, we all have access to a variety of databases, and my kids are 23 and 19 now, and they always laugh at me because I'm always at night doing research for my clients. And the databases can be anything that we purchase on a private licensing agreement to some of the free ones that I'm going to put on the slideshow, so you will have them if you want to do the research on it. But it's looking at consumer buying patterns, a tapestry of what soccer moms do, and they drop the kids at the field, and they go get coffee, and they go work out, and then they do whatever it is. It's one of those things that you need to know wherever you're buying, but it's also looking at the demand and the gaps in that particular economy or that particular product market. So keep in mind that when you're looking to go to a foreign market, you should really know a lot about your current market and then do a comparison analysis of where you're going, and that's what we do.
Denise, I would like to say too that as students here, we have access, the college pays for access to databases. There are two that are really good. One is Reference USA and the other is Statista. In our marketing courses, entrepreneurship, some of the business courses, I'm sure economics as well, we can get market data. There is a website, and at first, the students are really excited, and it's a little eerie, but you could research your neighbors. It gives profiles of your neighbors. You can search people with respect to their interests. So in my profile, it tells what types of sports I like, what activities I like, my income bracket, and other interests. Where do you think they get their data from? I don't know, and they just go out there and put out there that I make this amount of money and that I'm interested in this and that. Where do you think they get the data from? It might be
Market research.
okay. Market research. Where else? Why does
Facebook.
CVS and Stop and Shop probably know my buying habits or patterns more than I do?
Because you have an account with them.
What kind of account? So yeah, a rewards account, and most people think, isn't this nice? Stop and Shop is giving me free coupons, and they're making it very convenient to give me this card so I can enjoy discounts. But what do you think they're doing with those cards? You swipe it, and then you run your purchases through. What do you think they're doing?
Selling that information.
They're collecting and they're selling that information, and they're building profiles on you, even as far as these subscriptions, or when you fill out product warranty cards, they ask you to fill out a little profile about yourself, and they can determine many things. So if I buy toothpaste this month and it's Colgate, and then it incurs a price increase of 30 cents, and I still buy that next month, and in 6 months another price increase, what does it say about my loyalty to that brand? I'm pretty loyal, right? But next month, if I'm switching from Crest to Crest, and the next month I'm going to AIM, if they even still make that, I'm not sure. What's it say? It says I'm price sensitive, and we'll talk about that, and you'll talk about that in economics. Anybody know what price sensitivity, what it's called? It's called elasticity, and you'll be talking about that in economics. But it's the sensitivity to price changes. But you do have these databases. I guess the main point is that we pay a lot of money here so that students have access to these records. But you can also, if you're starting a business, target certain areas. You can put in certain demographics. You want a certain education level, certain income level. You want to know where the fitness centers are that meet this criteria, and it'll actually give you a heat map and give you bios regarding all this information. So the next time you're in the library, make sure you ask for some information.
That's great information.
Right.
Secondary research that you do when you do the marketing analysis. And you do your secondary before you do your primary. I don't know why they did that, but I guess it's kind of a fun thing to do with data analysts.
So why do you, I'm sorry, yeah, just, why do you think, what is the difference between primary and secondary data? What do you think? Anybody know? Who's collecting primary data? Primary, what do you think? The companies are going out there conducting their own research. Secondary data is research that other people have conducted or compiled. What would be the advantage and disadvantage of each? What do you think? Primary data. I want some information. I'm going to you directly. Why could that? What would be an advantage of that?
It'll be more accurate to what you're looking for.
Could be more accurate. It could be more geared to what I'm looking for. It could be, I could pose the questions or the survey. Some more drawbacks to doing all my own research.
That information is getting data from someone. There could be some false information.
Okay, so if I decide I can go on and log into a database here at MCC, that's secondary research, I'm pulling up some data. What about that is different than me having to survey each one of you? What's different?
Opportunity cost.
Opportunity cost, good. And opportunity cost is what? What is foregone your next best alternative? Oh, I'm sorry. So there are two commodities which you're giving up by doing it yourself with primary. What are they? Time and money. So there's benefits and drawbacks to each, but I'm sorry.
Because that covers and save on voice, thank you. So as you're looking at that kind of thought process, remember that the other thing that the stores do when they're collecting your membership card is they're mapping that with U.S. Census data. Do they also have access to Privtel, Mintel, Euromonitor, Global Edge, do they have those things?
Global Edge we do, I don't know about
Okay.
the others.
Global Edge, if you have not played with them, I encourage you to play with it. The license there is a part of the curriculum and program.
I think it's built, they're going through some changes right now, so I just have to verify. I know that some of the, due to budgetary cuts, I would just have to confirm what we still have.
So Global Edge should be free, and we have access to it too, as well through the SBDC, to collect a lot of that primary and secondary data through a variety of resources. It doesn't happen in an hour, it might take up to a week, but because there's a lot of people in the queue that can get it. But keep in mind, when you're starting to put together your distribution methods, your terms and conditions to how you're gonna market, who's gonna do your marketing. One of the things that shocks a lot of my clients is I do not promote, and I think someone's gonna kick me on this one day, I do not promote billboards, radio, television, nor paper media. I promote in every way that I can, social media, website, SEO, and going global with your website. You have to be able to think about it in terms of how you will reach the rest of the world at the lowest cost, highest degree of efficiency, and immediate response. And that's not going to happen by mailing somebody a newspaper. So keep that in mind, that when you're looking at setting your goals for profit and loss, you might have to do some degree of a little bit of both. And so there's a balance in what you promote, and there's a timeline that you want to look at when you do a marketing campaign. How do you start? How do you grow? And then how do you revamp your marketing plan? That will change your action steps and your tactics. And that's Roman numeral 4 on the board. We talked about primary and secondary countries in some ways, but when we do that research, we want to figure, has anyone heard the term the low-hanging fruit? And if you've gone to the orchards and you've picked fruit, you usually pick the ones that you don't have to get off the ground. Most people don't want to get a ladder and climb up there. They don't want to do it indirectly and put somebody on their shoulders and say, oh, look at the color. But we want to be able to look at this in terms of doing it in a primary target, which is the easiest way to get in there. And that could be direct marketing. Other times, indirect sales. Other times, it's going to have to be indirect because you don't have a distribution chain, you don't have the relationships, and you don't have the contacts that will be able to actually go and deliver it. You don't speak the language, you don't understand the street signs, you don't understand the terms of their infrastructure, so you're going to have to do it indirect. And that's what Roman numeral 4 is all about, is how do you get that out there in the most effective way. Pro forma balance sheets, they've talked about pro formas, these are projections.
Some of these students are first semester college students, others are
Okay.
second years, so they, many may probably have not.
All right, how many of you have a checking account or savings account? Okay, I'm not going to ask you to balance, and I'm a former banker, I'm not going to go through that. But when you start looking at the activity that's going into your checking account, you're either plus or you're minus. I hope that you're always plus, again, I'm a banker. So when we start looking at a trend over the past 3 months, 6 months, and a year, you want to see if you're still trending. Are you having more income at certain times? You're going down. Pro formas give you that projection. So it's a historical analysis, but it's a projection based on your history. And that's as simple as I'm going to make it. I think I just want to leave it at that.
Sure.
But keep in mind, if you're going to be exporting, whoever's going to be buying that product or financing you is going to want to know what your capability is. And then the implementation schedule. It's one thing to say, I'm going to sell hamburgers and french fries to you, and it's another to be able to do it. We talked earlier in 2 slides before about your capacity. Do you have a french fry supply chain under your belt? In other words, the potatoes, the grease that you're going to fry it in, the machinery and equipment, and the staffing. Well, if you don't meet that contract, how can you step it or scale it? And scaling it means, I know you want 1 million pounds of french fries, but I can't deliver those on Monday, October 1st. I'm going to deliver 100,000 pounds rather than 1 million. And then the second week, I'm going to deliver 250 pounds until I get up to meet my contract over a 12-month period of time. So we have to think about it in economies of scale, but also we have to think about it in delivery by scaling it. And that way you have time to ramp up your operations and your distribution. Does that make sense to everybody? So the background of facts again comes into play and the competitive environment. When you start looking at the market research, I've kind of covered this as well as Kevin when we went through this. We want to see who else is out there doing this because we're not going to be the only customer going in there. You have people from around the world competing in, as I say, Zimbabwe or London or wherever you're going to be. But keep in mind that there's advice that you can get and there's other folks that can come into play. Your competitor sometimes is going to be your best complementer. World events is what I really want to touch on in this. How many of you would be willing to export product and set up operations in the Middle East right now? How many of you would be willing to go to South America right now? And when you start reading the news, some of that is hype. Not everybody in the world is bad. But there is risk when you ship to a country that is either in a state of war or on our forbidden lists. And it's really important for you to understand that, and that's why there's a number of different gold key services that are offered through our UCX and through the SBDCs and so on. So you want to make sure that you know what you're getting into. There may be a product, for example, if you're shipping airplane engines or military wear that you would be shipping to those countries, but it is escorted in a different way through a different type of process than a consumer good. And then this would be where we conduct the research, and I promised that I would share some of these with you. Export.gov, census.gov, these are some of the places that you should be able to get the information from. And Mr. John Shu, I think it's time for me to come back on stage again. Does anybody have questions before we?
So just in case you didn't get those links, it's okay that I share those with the students?
Absolutely. Anybody have a presentation time?
The other thing I want to mention too, I don't know if we're going to talk about financial exposure risk in currency exchange risk, but you'll talk about that in economics and business. But it depends too, when you're writing your contracts or you're paying for your goods and services, you're collecting money for goods and services, you need to know, you need to hedge, based on the currency. You need to know what the exchange rates are, et cetera.
Okay, let's move on. Let's go to 5. Thank you for a beautiful presentation, Denise. Okay, I know you can make a lot of money, right? But you know the process, you have a business plan, you know where to target the countries or product services you sell. And now, of course, you can make a lot of money, but sometimes that, also give you some troubles here because export compliance controls. Don't let this happen to you. The reason for export control is that many reasons, national security. Because we want to make sure when you export, especially those high-tech product services, you want to make sure that who is your buyer or we call end users. We got some issues, our companies export to company B in another country, which is a friendly to America, but we sell that product to our enemies. For instance, if they buy rice from an American company and sell rice to North Korea, big issue here. Okay, so for many reasons, anti-terrorism, there are all these reasons. We should, my job is to make sure that you're aware of that, and this is a very challenging for the smaller companies. You have only 1 or 2 people. You don't have a department, compliance department like big companies. They can afford to have an attorney. But that's the area we like to know, because why? We can make a lot of money, yes, for export, but we might have a lot of penalties here. Okay, so we need a license? No. Even we see many of the items that you do not need license, year 99. You got to make sure which country you export. Even sometimes our allies too need some license. You have to get government approval of it. Now here's the data last year. I look at the Bureau of Industry and Security. That's the federal agency controls the license. Okay, and they also enforce the laws, regulation on export. I look at 32 individuals and been convicted. Criminal patent fines over $27. Look at it, and 886 a month imprisonment, huge. So I now put $250,000 per person, up to $1 million. So legal compliance export controls basics. We got export administration regulation year EAR. Title 15 of Code of Federal Registration. You got to know your client. Principle number 1. Rule number 1, know your client. Who is your client? Okay, who are they? Want to make sure. Otherwise, red flags. If they call you, you don't identify themselves. Where are they? What's the purpose of this purchase of buying your product, especially high-tech products? And you should stay away from reporting to the government. Here's all the website here. We used to have all the lists. There are about 20 federal agencies involved international trade. Every agency has a bad guy list. Okay, so those you cannot do business with. So here's a list of denied personal list here by the Commerce Department. We have an unverified list too. Entities list. From Department of Treasury, they have their own list too, especially designated nationals. Country sanctions list too. Now, so to make life easier, so the government pull out together, we got a consolidated list. Okay, for all the bad guys from different federal agencies, we put them in one list. So really, you have to check the person's name, the company's name on that list. Make sure they are not on the list. If they are on the list, on the bad guy list, you cannot do any business with them. Okay, that's on the website. Okay, now let's talk about the last steps. Step 6, finance. Okay. That's a good. Federal agencies have a lot of finance program to help U.S. companies to export. SBA, the agency I work for, Exim Bank, they don't finance import, but they do finance export. They use export import bank. OPIC stands for Overseas Private Investment Company. They have their programs too. The USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture. They have all these trade finance programs. We will talk about today about Okay, I think I missed one slide. The SBA has a program. You can borrow up to $5 million with 90% guarantee from the federal government. So what we spend. If you have products, you have an order from Canada, $1 million sales, and you can borrow $1 million here, and we will guarantee to the bank. You don't borrow money directly from SBA. You will go through the bank. They will use a government program to finance your deals. So if the bank says, well, I'm going to lend you $1 million, for instance, if for some reasons, if the company went bankrupt, they come to SBA to get that 90% guarantee from the government. So that really values the moment to manage your money. It's like stealing, okay? Government program exactly looks like stealing. You have to be eligible for apply for that. So with 90% guarantee from the federal government, so most lenders are willing to lend more money to $5 million. Canada has a small business, only, the maximum amount is $250,000. Okay. So that's how America has really a more powerful or friendly program to help small exporters. And on the other side, I'm talking about the STEP grant. STEP stands for State Trade Extension Program. Okay, and that was last year. We awarded $18 million to 44 states. Connecticut received $244,000 with a matching, so total is $325,000. And you can apply as an exporter $7,000 per company per year. For instance, if you want to redesign your website, make it look more international or in different languages, people buy online, okay? So if you really want to attract international clients online, which I think you guys I'm all the time, you can design that. I mean, IT person call it, there's no businesses and okay. You can help the company here, you can sort of apply for that grant. $7,000, $3,000 can be used to upgrade your company's website. Every company has a website. So you as a student, if you're smart enough, look at company's website, say, okay, I can help you design website, with different languages and capacities or contents. And you're charging $2,000, $3,000. I don't have money, except you can apply from STEP grant. Okay, it's SBA that way to the Connecticut companies. Or look at your parents or your relatives, if they have product and service they want to export. Also, for instance, if they want to go to New York to attend a trade show, we have some trade show, international trade shows there, to meet potential international buyers. You can expense that cost. Okay, the product which costs $4,000, you can put it in. So basically, it's $7,000. If you're in New York and Massachusetts, you can apply for $10,000. And this year, we just got another approval. Connecticut is $390,000. So even match up, I mean, it's not $400,000. First come, first serve. Okay, you know, it's really not big money. $7,000 per company is $350,000. When you get 50 companies, don't forget we have 5,000. Any IT person here? You guys are good at web design? Yes or no? Okay, that's a good opportunity to share with your friend because it costs the company nothing because they can hire you to design the website. They're easy to apply. It's online. It's right here. It's on the website. It's online. Program is online. I think it's not October 1st. That's our new physical year starts. You can apply for that. I think we're done here. Any questions? You want to take photos on me here? You can take one? You can take one? No? You probably cannot.
Take one for you. And he's got, and,
No, I don't know, is this locked? Okay, we're open to questions.
he's gonna come back and, at 10 after, take more photos of
Do you
folks.
have the, okay, you can take that.
Yeah, he's gonna
Do
take.
you have a website? I have 3 minutes video show. Video.
Yeah, sure.
They can show you how a company that I have.
Sorry. In Philadelphia, I used to work in Philadelphia. Ice cream company. You're talking about all the food, right? Ice cream company. I helped them to export in 2008. It's a small family-owned company, 20-some employees, 6 generations. So through my assistance, we're also together with the SBDC partners, they are the largest ice cream company, exporter to China. And also won the award from SBA Family Employees of the Year in 2008. I also patronized by the president in 2011. So they became like a model, for such a small U.S. family-owned company, and how they start to export. Okay, in America, if you travel in Europe, you cross the river, another border, or how to that's export. You go to another country. In America, especially this country, they never in other country. They're originally from New Jersey, coming to Philadelphia. That means export for them. Let me see whether we can find a website.
Yeah. If I could also just interject, so we like to highlight some of our student successes here at MCC. This year, we had a student that was taking an evening course. It was a marketing course, and the marketing instructor gave the students an assignment. Said, I want you to come up with an idea. The instructor at the time was on crutches, and ironically, when I started my job here, I was on crutches for 6 months and in a boot. And the instructor said, as he was walking into class fumbling with his items, I really wish somebody would come up with an idea or a solution for this problem. So we had a student that came up with an idea. It's called a crutch caddy. She's been through the business. She developed a prototype while in this marketing class. It's gained some traction, and then she made advancements in her prototypes. And now this product is sold. I'm amazed every time I go to a pharmacy, I see a crutch caddy with a K, kind of like the Kardashians, all kids. And I see it, and she's highly successful. She was just featured at the Campaign 2020 launch here at MCC. It's our endowment campaign. But it's very interesting. We had students, again, this was in a class, she started a product. It's gained momentum. Now she's selling on Amazon, Walmart, and directly through her website. But I'll quickly show you, and then I'll show it on. But I want to show you that our students are selling internationally. Here are some photos of her product. But if you've ever been at crutches, here is the bag. So somebody's on crutches. This bag attached the Velcro. She went through many different modifications. It'll hold credit cards, cell phone, pens, etc.
And it started with crutches, and then she expanded it, and sometimes you don't have to expand the product line, you can expand the uses. So if we think of what you have in your refrigerator, Arm & Hammer baking soda, what do you think was originally intended for, baking soda? Baking, cooking. What are some other uses you use? Cleaning, what else? Brushing your teeth? Odor absorbent, good. So it's what she's doing is also capitalizing on this. She's not reinventing the product, looking at different uses for it. So the last item you'll see that now she's promoting it to the elderly in nursing homes to attach to walkers. There are also hospital beds that she's using a different modification of this product so that she can, market it to them as well. She sells internationally. Her biggest challenge is what? She needs to keep the price down and turn a profit. What do you think her biggest challenge is? Where do you think she's manufacturing that? Here in the U.S.? No, overseas. And she's conflicted about that. She's a business owner. She needs to make smart business decisions. But on the other hand, she would like to be able to promote and have a manufacturer in the U.S. and create jobs here. But unfortunately, at this time, that's not an option. But I just wanted to give you a little brief highlight of one of our students. Yes. So she has an account in Walmart, and then we have other students with success stories. I will also say, I always tell my business students, the show must go on. When I was in graduate school, I was on a team, we had presentations the last day, and there were 5 teams in this graduate course at the University of Hartford. And I'm always about having a plan B, a backup, because infinitely, if something always goes wrong. So today, I not only had one, but I went and bought another clicker today, and we tested it out earlier, and it works, and now all of a sudden it's not. So always have a backup plan.